Hello, good evening, and welcome back to another episode of Minds on Guard, where we're taking a look at media and all of the ways that we interact with it, the ways that it plays on our emotions, our behaviors, the ways that people use it to do these kinds of things, and the ways that we can keep our minds guarded, if you will, from any type of attack or manipulation, and how we can engage with the 21st century media machine and really life in the 21st century in ways that keep us rooted and grounded in truth and connected to the objective truths of reality, so that we can stay grounded, so that we can process the world in healthy and accurate ways. That way we can do well by ourselves, live well, own our lives, take responsibility for the things that we care about and the people that we love and cherish, and that we can just live good and prosperous lives. In the last few videos, we went into a bit of a dive into the emotional appeal fallacy. We talked a little bit about what it is, how it can happen, and how media machines and big media companies utilize the emotional appeal and really wreak havoc on our minds. And if we're not careful, we can fall into some really, really dangerous traps that lead us down some incredibly destructive paths. And I want to shift from that into another sort of series that gets at what I feel is one of the more pervasive issues on a broad scale cultural level, and that is the concept of postmodernism. And this concept, this philosophy, if you want to call it that, is talked about a lot. It's thrown around a lot in the 21st century. Big names, famous people use this term to describe a whole lot of what happens and what is going on in the world. And while a lot of that is valid, I do want to speak to it in a slightly different context, namely the core philosophical underpinnings that are happening in postmodernism and how it is so dangerous for us as people who want to be free and critical thinkers and live in the world with objective truth as our guide. So yeah, we'll go on this little journey. It'll be a couple videos that I devote to postmodernism and a lot of my own personal understandings that are backed up by other scholarly works and scholars in the fields of philosophy and theology. So yeah, join me on this. I hope we have some fun. I know that there'll be some learning along the way. Yeah, let's get going. So when we're talking about postmodernism in the 21st century and the way that it exists and plays out in our lives and really in the world around us, what I want to sort of emphasize is that the name of the game, the thing to look for and to understand, is that there is a constant battle happening in the postmodern worldview for power. The name of the game is power. And that the fact that this is true points to a distinction about the underpinning philosophy that actually is dominating all of mainstream culture and mainstream media currently. Postmodernism and postmodern thinking have become the norm in nearly all areas of our world. This philosophy gained prominence in the 20th century, namely through a select few French thinkers and writers who developed the concepts into what they've become today. It is a philosophy that is objectively opposed to concepts like meta-narrative, or something that would be an overarching narrative that spans a very long stretch of time. And it is also opposed to things like universal truths that govern reality, much of what we've been discussing. The postmodernists would say that any truth is only true based on its relative historical and social context. You can think of the phrase, live your truth, and this will point to what I mean by that. What this means for us is that at any given moment, based on any given parameter or set of parameters, a person is allowed to make objective, epistemological truth claims based on any subjective stance that suits their desire to have their ideas be valid in the philosophical sense of validity and sound thinking. Now, the issue with that is that reality is as it is, and no amount of magical thinking or deep desire for something to be so is going to change that. And this is one area where postmodernism falls apart, with very minimal effort as far as attacking the worldview, as it makes the claim that there is no such thing as objective truth, thus begging the question, how do and can we even know that statement to be true? I mean, think about it. If you live under the idea that there's no such thing as an objective truth, and you make the claim that we cannot know if anything is true, how can you even say that that statement has a truth value of its own? It's a completely untenable idea. It doesn't work, doesn't hold water. There must be a truth value assigned to something like that, and that directly points to the need for objective truth values and truth claims. And this idea, it points to the second area where the philosophy of postmodernism falls apart, in that it claims that because all truth is relative, that nothing has any inherent meaning or value. Again, if this idea is true, we wouldn't be able to confirm or deny it as being so under the postmodernist framework, as the words which make the claim of there being no meaning or value would necessarily be void of any meaning themselves. And the postmodernist would have, in fact, said nothing discernibly true if such a thing existed. We see quickly that we enter into an infinite regress almost immediately within this philosophy. It just keeps circling back on itself and really devours its own tail like a snake. And as such, it should be regarded as useless when investigating for objective truth. The real dangerous thing about this philosophy is that it validates all of those appeals to emotion that we have discussed up to this point. People want to feel like they have a firm handle on their lives. Not only that, but to not feel this is destabilizing, and in certain ways it may be perceived subconsciously as a kind of existential threat. If you don't have any discernible control over your feelings and over the things that you understand to be true in your life, then how can you say you understand what the world is? How can you understand your own position in the world? How can you even say that your thought processes are valid or that you could trust any of it? Enter postmodernism and those that push postmodern thinking and the need to feel completely unassailable regarding individual perception of the truth. It's immediately within reach as we simply appeal to any subjective and relative and typically fallacious claim. Then you can slap the label of my truth on things and saunter off into an ever deepening state of delusion. It's in this way that the power dynamic aspect of postmodernism comes into full view. In postmodernism, right and wrong do not exist as those ideas necessitate certain value judgments, and that things carry an inherent meaning. As such, there's only what truth can dominate and win out over all others, or which truth, I suppose, over that can dominate and win out. And this would be the most accepted among the largest group of people. That's how we are gauging what is good and true and valuable. The group dynamic, the group appeal, is really what's dominating culture these days. Individualism, as we've discussed before, is being attacked and eroded and systematically destroyed by people that would push a group ideology, or that are trying to push a collectivism. And that's where we tie back into the idea of socialization that is taught in schools today. And I really do believe that this does a great deal of damage to society across every area that falls under this postmodern framework of thinking. And it really is my hope that through thinking clearly about the things that we're talking about, that we, as people who are engaging in these learning processes, these critical thinking processes, that we can really work to slow the progression of this very toxic philosophy and begin to move toward accepting, understanding, and moving forward in the knowledge of that there is an objective truth to the world, an objective truth to reality, that there is value in all that there is in the world. And we stop this constant vying for group power by any means necessary. So we will continue further in this examination of postmodernism with some examples of how these ideas play out in order to put some meat on the bones of this concept. But for now, I want to leave it with that postmodernism really is, at this point in the 20th century, an effort to gain and control as much power as possible over the largest group of people possible. We'll dig in later to some ideas like intersectionality, more of the woke ideology. But for now, I want to leave you with this. There are objective truths to reality. God's law, God's creation, is encoded with His truth, and it is that we must always look towards for our guiding principles and our guiding understanding of how to process reality. Through examining our thoughts and examining our minds and our hearts, we can work to shed our ego's desire to control and dominate and this constant will to power. We can submit that to the truth that God has encoded for us and align our hearts and minds with that which is objectively real, good, and true about reality. So until the next video, I hope you all stay safe, look after yourselves and your loved ones, and always stay diligent and vigilant with your minds on guard.